Well, hi guys. Welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. Are you a Who Dat fan? If you're a Who Dat fan, subscribe to my channel. Let's keep it in the Who Dat family. I love the Saints as much as you do. When you see one of my videos, I'm telling you what I think. You let me know in the comments what you think. Subscribe to my channel, comment. I respond to my comments. Let's be who dat friends, huh? And let's talk about the Saints and let's talk about the upcoming draft. I'm excited because the draft picks are set for the top of the draft, and the Saints are picking eighth, and we're going to do a 2026 mock draft for our beloved Saints. 7 rounds, no trades, and let's see what it turns out to be. I've decided I'm not going to do any trades. And man, that's tough. I've done these mock drafts. Usually I do one every night. I like to see how the boards are set up. I like to try different things. And almost every time a trade is involved because I love acquiring extra picks, especially if you can get extra picks in the top 4 rounds. You're going to make your team better. I sit here with 8 picks. That's what the Saints have right now. Let's pull up the picks for the Saints. Those are the picks that we're dealing with. Eighth overall in the first round. We have one second round pick, pick 42. One third round pick, pick 73. We have two very late fourth round picks, pick 132, pick 136. That's all based on how Seattle finishes this year, one of those picks. And the other fourth round pick is a comp pick that we're supposed to get from losing Paulson Adebo. So that pick is hovering around 136. So we'll see how that turns out. But the first fourth round pick, pick 132, that's based on how Seattle finishes. So we'll see if they get knocked out of the playoffs early. We'll get a better pick there. In the fifth round, we have 2 picks. The top one is ours, pick 148, and the second fifth round pick is based on how Seattle finishes. That pick is currently 170. And then we have one sixth round pick, pick 190. So that's where the Saints are drafted. I've decided in this draft I'm not going to make any trades. I'm just going to pick where we're at. I wanted to see how many positions of need would not be addressed if I were just to stay put. And in order to make this funner for the viewer, you guys, before the first round pick and before the second round pick, I'm going to pull up the list of players that are available so that we can all discuss, you know, the numerous moves we could make. And yeah, we're gonna see what it turns out to be, and but we're also going to talk about what could have been. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I did this mock on NFL mock draft simulator. Pardon me, the NFL mock draft database. Now, NFL mock draft database simulator is it's basically a consensus list. So most people do their mocks on PFF. It kind of drives me crazy because PFF is one of those sites that just they have their preference. You can go with a consensus list. You can go with PFF's list. You can go with ESPN's list. You can go with a ton of other lists. So I like to use the site that's a consensus. So a couple of players are a little off from what PFF has. And if I thought Trevor Sycamore was the greatest mind in prognostication, then yeah, I would go with PFF. But it's every time. And I visit a lot of sites that use a lot of different variables. Some of them go by their own, lists. And even though PFF might have certain players rated a certain way, they know the players well enough where they're going to go and grab a guy anyway. Here's an example. Wide receiver CJ Daniels used to play with LSU. He's with Miami right now. On PFF, he's a third round guy. And most other sites, he's a day three guy. So that kind of thing where, if I know the value of CJ Daniels, and I think if I were in a front office, I would factor him around the third or fourth round, somewhere around there. So if you're on PFF, you're not going to get him in the fourth round, but if you're on this site, you might get him in the fourth, maybe even fifth round. So, little heads up on what's going on with the rankings of the players. So, in this mock, there were no trades made in the top seven before the Saints picked at eight. So, let's get this thing started. Here are the draft picks that happened before the Saints pick at eight. The Las Vegas Raiders drafted quarterback Dante Moore out of Oregon, which is kind of nuts. I'm pretty sure Fernando Mendoza is going to be the number one pick. Uh, the Jets picking number two, grab Mendoza out of Indiana, the quarterback. So two quarterbacks gone, 1-2. If Dante Moore enters the draft, I'm assuming these will be the first two picks. I'm thinking Mendoza than Moore. The site had Moore go first, then Mendoza. Arizona picks at three, and they grab Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle out of Miami. With the fourth overall pick, the Tennessee Titans grabbed Reuben Bain Jr., the edge rusher. The New York Giants, selecting fifth, grab wide receiver Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. The Cleveland Browns, picking number six, grab wide receiver Cornell Tate out of Ohio State. Man, two receivers back to back. Arvell Reese still on the board. And with pick seven, the Washington Redskins grab edge rusher David Bailey out of Texas Tech. Now that's how the first seven picks went. You know, we'll see what happens in reality. These things change every time I do a simulation. The very next simulation I did, Mendoza went first. Arvell Reese was taken by Tennessee instead of Bain. I think the Giants went with Tate. Cleveland went with an offensive lineman. And then I think Washington grabbed safety Caleb Downs. So, every simulation is different. But when reality hits you, this is what happened. Now the Saints are on the clock with pick eight. Those are the players taken. Now I'm going to show you a list of 11 players that are still on the board. And let's pull this list up and look at it. Linebacker Arvell Reese out of Ohio State is still on the board. And I know almost all of you are saying you don't even consider the rest of the board. You run up and grab that guy. You wouldn't be faulty in doing that, I don't think. But let's look at this list. Safety Caleb Downs out of Ohio State is still on the board. Running back Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, still on the board. Offensive tackle Spencer Fano out of Utah, still on the board. Only one offensive tackle was drafted in the first seven picks. Edge rusher Keldrick Falk. Defensive tackle Peter Woods. Falk out of Auburn. Peter Woods out of Clemson. Cornerback Mansour Delane out of LSU. Cornerback Gerard McCoy out of Tennessee. Wide receiver Makai Lemon. The top three receivers for everyone are Tyson, Tate, and Lemon. People say the Saints need to grab a wide receiver. They want a playmaker. They want a playmaker in the first round. And when you say playmaker, I'm thinking you're talking about either edge rusher, wide receiver, or perhaps the running back. You've also got linebacker Sonny Styles still sitting there. And I threw in tight end Kenyon Sadiq. Styles out of Ohio State, Sadiq out of Oregon. So there's your choice. And I had decided when I started this draft, I was not going to make any trades. I just want to pick where we're at so that we can further look at, what happens if you stick and pick, what happens if you make a trade, We're going to definitely do a mock on this channel probably next week, the end of this week, next week, where we're going to make trades and we're going to pull the results up on this one and we're going to compare the two. We're just going to, we're going to have fun with it. But for right now, this is your choice, guys, and you go ahead and make the choice you want to make and you feel good about it. Let's talk about the trade down. The offer I got was from pick 11, the Miami Dolphins. And they were wanting to trade me a third round pick and a fourth round pick. They were also willing to give me their fifth round pick if I gave them my sixth round pick. And then I was still going to get their seventh round pick. So that was the trade that was offered at the time. I look at the available players that are here, and I'm sure the Saints as an organization would have conviction on one of these guys, and they would, you don't mess around with it. It's a game for me. I don't know these players personally, and I see the Saints as a fan, as we all do as a fan, and we have ideas of what will make the team better. We have ideas of what would be best for the team, and we're not really in there. I'm sure these guys would perhaps have a guy already written down running up to the podium, knowing that that's the guy they wanted the whole time. Well, I would definitely consider trading down. I'm picking up a third round pick and a fourth round pick to move down three spots. And when I look at the list of players that are still here, there's five of them that I really, really want. So dropping down three spots would be fine with me. The five I'm targeting are linebacker Reese, safety Downs, running back Love, cornerback Delane, wide receiver Lemon. I could take either of those five guys right here and be happy. Granted, I'm leaning more towards Reese, Love, Lemon, and then Downs, and then Delane. And depending on whether we re-sign Alante Taylor, as to whether I would pick Delane first or Downs first, and you know, Brandon Staley would have this vision of what would be best for his team, so he would have a preference between Downs and Delane. I'm sure everyone is thinking Downs because he's the highest rated player. So, but yeah, Downs and Delane to me would be the two I would be choosing from if I were to trade down three, and I would lose Reese, the chance to get Reese and Love and Lemon. My consolation prize would be either Downs or Delane. But I'd be picking up a third round pick and a fourth round pick. The third round pick, I think, would be 74 overall. And then the fourth round pick, I think their fourth round pick was like 114. So we'd be adding 74 and 114 to our draft picks here. And then we'd be also picking up a fifth round pick. We'd be losing the sixth, but we'd be gaining a seventh. So we'd be moving up from the sixth round to the fifth round, grabbing an extra seventh, and still getting a third round pick and a fourth round pick just to move down three spots. So yeah, I'm thinking if that move were made, the worst case scenario would be I would lose the chance to draft Reese and then Love and then Lemon. And then, yeah, I would pick up the extra picks, but then I would have to settle for either safety Downs or quarterback Delane. That would be worst case scenario with a trade down. I'm cool with it. I'd be cool with it, but we're not doing trade downs in this one. So there's all the caveats before I let you know what my decision was. And I decided that playmaker on this team is what's needed. And I know the depth of the different positions in the draft. So there's some there's some thinking here that I could get a wide receiver later on. I might be able to get an edge rusher later on. Nothing as impactful as Arvell Reese. But Arvell Reese to me is kind of like a tweener guy. Like I feel like he'd be playing linebacker in early downs, and then we'd ask him to rush the passer, on third down. So yeah, very good, versatile player. Caleb Downs as a star would be great. Jeremiah Love would be a playmaker on offense, which is something everybody thinks we need. We're good with the quarterback, and we want to improve, and we want to improve in certain areas. I'm thinking offense is the area you need to focus on since the defense performed, consistently, and the offense struggled from time to time. Mekhi Lemon at wide receiver would be the other playmaker at on the offensive side of the ball that I would be leaning towards. And then, of course, Delane, top rated cornerback. So, yeah, as tempting as Arvell Reese is, as the highest rated player here, I'm thinking offensive firepower is what we need. So, my choice came down to either running back Jeremiah Love or wide receiver Mekhi Lemon. And with the eighth overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select running back Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. It happened. 6 foot, 214 pounds. He's going to be, a playmaker on offense. And being a running back, he's going to have his hands on the ball quite a bit. I feel like Tyler Shuck is a quarterback that's going to elevate the play of the players around him. I think that a fully healthy wide receiving core, as it stands right now with the Saints, isn't isn't the worst situation to be in. You retain Chris Olave, you have Devon Bailey with good size, you have a speed element with Trey Palmer, and you have another guy in Jalen Polk that wants to be a number two, number three kind of wide receiver. So you may be good. I would love to get a wide receiver in the first round. I would love to trade down. This is the choice that was made. We're going to go with Love at running back. We're going to give Tyler Shuck a piece that he doesn't necessarily have to elevate, right? He needs some help too. It'd be really helpful if everybody he throws to catches the ball, gets open and catches the ball, yes. But man, once he turns around and puts the ball in the hands of the running back, it's on the running back after that and the offensive line. And that's what this team's missing on offense. That's deep down what I feel. We need a better offensive line. We need to get the running game going. And then I think we'll be turning a corner and winning more games. So that was my choice. And I like showing you everyone that was there. You guys let me know in the comments what you would do. I think if the option were there, I would have traded down. I would have picked up the extra picks and I would have settled with what was left. After I documented this mock, I did the mock again and actually traded down from 8 to 11. And Jeremiah Love was still on the board when my pick came up at 11. So I ended up picking up the extra third, the extra fourth, moving up from the sixth round to the fifth round, getting the extra seventh, and still had Jeremiah Love on the board. So, yeah, trade down in the very next simulation I did worked out great. I was able to still get the same player and pick up all the extra picks. So, all right, the second round pick is going to come up 42 overall, and I'm going to show you, and this will be the last round I do this, but I'm going to show you the players that were there on the board when my second round pick came up. Pick 42 comes up for the Saints, and these are the players that are on the board. The top 10 in that first section are the top 10 highest rated players left on the board according to the simulation, according to a consensus. And then I ended up adding 7 more players underneath the consensus top players because these are 7 players I'm considering with the second round pick, regardless of where they're ranked on this particular list. So let's look at them. Linebacker CJ Allen out of Georgia. Wide receiver KC Concepcion is still on the board out of Texas A&M. Defensive tackle Caleb Banks out of Florida. Offensive guard Emmanuel Pregnon out of Oregon. Defensive tackle Amari Washington out of Oregon. Wide receiver Chris Bell out of Louisville is still there. Defensive tackle Christian Miller out of Georgia. Edge rusher Zion Young out of Missouri. Wide receiver Chris Brazil or Brazel out of Tennessee. Big and fast. Safety, Emmanuel McNeil Warren out of Toledo. Those were the top 10 that were on the list. And then here's seven more that I added to the list that I value just as much. Cornerback Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. Wide receiver Zachariah Branch out of Georgia. Safety A.J. Hulsey out of LSU. Offensive tackle Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern. Edge rusher Akeem Mesidor out of Miami. Edge rusher Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee. Wide receiver Elijah Surratt out of Indiana. So the players at this bottom section are players I added. And, their overall rankings kind of dip into the 50s and 60s. And since your third round pick is pick 73, you might think that some of those players may still be available. So you could put them off, but I kind of value some of those players just as much as the consensus top 10 left on the board. I mean, the first one that jumps out to me is Casey Concepcion. He's such a playmaker. He's expected to go in the first round. He's still sitting there at 42. You got a running back with your first round pick. Casey Concepcion, playmaker with the ball in his hands, can return kicks. Yeah, he's 5'11", about 190 pounds. He's a great playmaker. He's kind of a gadget guy. I think he played running back in his career and wide receiver, and a guy that we kind of guy we don't have. Great with the ball in his hands, but it scares me to think of a small guy across from Chris Olave. Olave would have the size advantage on Concepcion. So I kind of worry about that. Chris Bell, you don't have to worry about that. He's 6'2", 225. He is thick and big. Played a year with Tyler Shuck at Louisville last year. So you bring Chris Bell on the team, you have a nice complement to Olave, a guy who is also good with the ball in his hands. Very tempting. And then Chris Brazel out of Tennessee. Wow. 6'4", I think, 5, and has great straight line speed. I think Brazel has become a better overall wide receiver of late. But before I would consider him at wide receiver, I would consider Elijah Surratt out of Indiana. Another guy that's pretty big, 6'2", 6'3", and maybe even 6'4". I know he's over 6'2", and good size and really solid hands, and would be an excellent complement to Chris Olave. Zachariah Branch is 5'10", 175 pounds, soaking wet, so Branch is really small. You get Branch opposite Chris Olave, and Chris Olave is a monster next to Branch, and that's kind of nuts. It scares me, but at the same time, Branch, much like Concepcion, great with the ball in his hands, brings you special teams talent as well. So that that's where you're at wide receiver. And if I were going to go wide receiver at this point, I'm probably probably leaning towards Elijah Surratt because it's such a perfect complement to Olave. Even though Concepcion and Branch may be bigger playmakers. And yeah, getting Chris Bell is so tempting. So yeah, there's 5 wide receivers on this list that I'm showing you right here. 4, 5. Well, yeah, I mean, there's just so much else going on here. I mean, we didn't get an edge rusher in the first round, so you can get Caleb Banks on the defensive line or Amari Washington. Both of them would plug the middle of the defensive line for you, be really good against the run. I favor Banks over Washington. Christian Miller's a guy who's a smaller guy, but he would be a great piece at defensive end for the Saints. And then the edge rushers, the highest one rated was Zion Young out of Missouri, but I am very much more partial to Akeem Mesidor and Joshua Josephs. Now, Mesidor is a better overall player, I think, from the edge on this list right now. Mesidor is 280 pounds. Now, I don't know. There's some thought that when the combine starts, Mesidor is going to drop a bunch of weight. He's going to time real good and everything else. Some people are thinking 280 pounds is not where Messidor is going to exist. He'll exist more in that 265 range, 270 range. And that translates into this defense of the Saints a little better if that's the case. But Messidor is just an extreme talent. It's really hard not to just go ahead and draft him here. And Joshua Josephs has like this 100% ability to rush the passer. He's only got 4 sacks this year. Tennessee's always been weird with how they utilize their defensive front. But Josephs would be a great piece in this defense. I don't know how he would handle early downs against the run, but he would be a monster versus the pass, rushing the passer. And then a couple of secondary options there. I like McNeil Warren. I would probably go with AJ Halsey at safety instead. And Chris Johnson, even though he's from a small school, San Diego State, Chris Johnson is a talent. He's got ability at cornerback, and the way the cornerback position is at this point in this particular draft, Chris Johnson would be a great pick, and there's kind of like a drop off after him. So it's kind of like do or die if you want to address cornerback at this point. So much to choose from. And I'm not going to forget offensive lineman. Emmanuel Pregnon in the middle of the second round would be a great pick. We need a starting guard. It all depends on what we do in free agency, whether we re-sign Alontae Taylor, if we attack free agency and we actually get a guard. If that's the case, then you don't think so much about guard. But until pen is put to paper and this team has a starting left guard, I'm going to constantly think of offensive line for this team in the draft. I'm going to have to, because when I think of the biggest needs for this team, guard is among the top. So, and I also throw in Caleb Tiernan, a great young offensive tackle, and he's really tall, but I still think we could play him at guard easily. So there you go. That is a ton of players. That's 17 players right there. And at this point, trading down is an excellent option. I mean, I could just say, all right, I literally sat here when I was doing this draft for about 20 minutes looking at this list. I thought to myself, at the time, it ran out on me because I could not make up my mind. I still can't. I did, but I don't. I don't like it. I wanted to trade down in the first round. I really want to trade down right here. CJ Allen's the best player. Just go grab him and be done with it. I thought about that. And then I thought, no, Caleb Banks is the way to go. Now, you can get a big body later on. You have to go wide receiver. Well, I'm looking at 5 of them right here. There's a chance there's going to be a wide receiver that I like in the third round with all of these options here. Edge rusher, that's one where if you don't get it in the first 2 rounds, it's going to be iffy. So I'm down to just grab Elijah Surratt, be happy you got a big wide receiver opposite Chris Olave, and move on. Or go ahead and grab an edge rusher now because you know it's something you really want. It's something that the most talented players, you have to address it early in the draft if you want to get the most talent out of that position. Or just get the defensive lineman, the run plugger in the middle. Because that's something I think we need to. Oh, God, I went on for 20 minutes and I thought, yeah, I would have forfeited my pick. I'd have been late on my pick. I'd have traded down is what I would have done. I could have, with this list, I could have traded down 10 spots and still been happy. I could have picked up an extra third or fourth to move that far in the second round. But I went ahead and made the choice, and man, I like it. I regret it. I don't know. Let me know what you guys would do with this list of players there. But with the 42nd pick in the second round of the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select edge rusher Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee. 6'3", 240 pounds. I went ahead and gambled. There's going to be a receiver later on I can get. There's going to be defensive linemen later on I can get. There's going to be offensive linemen later on I can get, but I want to get a top rated edge rusher. And man, Akeem Mesidor, if I know that dude's 265 pounds, I'm drafting him instead of Josephs. But every time I look up Mesidor, he's listed at 280. And I just don't know. So this is another thing. It's like the first round, Bain or Bailey. Bain from Miami's bigger, but I would lean toward Bailey. And in this instance, Messidor's bigger, so I went ahead with the smaller guy. And Joseph's, man, he's just a demon at rushing the passer, and he's a specialist. I think you put him with Chase Young on third down, and the quarterback's going to have an issue. Joseph's is coming. You can't double team everybody. Chase Young's coming, Joseph's is coming. So yeah, that's what I did. And I'm glad I was able to show you all of the players available for those first two rounds to let you guys experience all of it, to see what you would have done. In hindsight's 2020. So congratulations if you came up with a better draft than I did. But yeah, that's what happened. So we've got the playmaker and Love on offense with the first round pick, and now we've got the pass rusher and Josephs with the second round pick. Third round pick comes up, and there's one wide receiver there from that list I showed you that's still there, and that's Branch. So, what's his first name? Zachariah Branch out of Georgia. So, was kind of hoping Surratt would still be there, maybe even Jacoby Lane out of USC. I was kind of hoping a guy with size would be there. Man, Zachariah Branch is a stud playmaker. And I know Ross Jackson right now, if he was watching this video, would be saying, oh, yeah, you grab Branch. Doesn't matter that he's 5'10, 170 pounds. Doesn't matter that Olave would have 2 inches on him and almost 20 pounds on him. Doesn't matter. Uh, playmaker, you go and get the playmaker. Well, I got Jeremiah Love in the first round. I'm still worried about our offensive line. There's no pen to paper with a free agent guard at this point in our life. So when I'm doing this draft, there's another guy that was on that list I showed you of available players in the second round. There's still another guy that's sitting there. And that guy is offensive tackle Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern. And I don't like the way the interior line is right now in the draft with this third round pick. I'm almost debating grabbing a center. But yeah, with the third round pick 73 overall in the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select offensive tackle Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern. This guy is going to play guard if he has to. In a perfect scenario, we've signed Edwards from Buffalo. He's our starting left guard. We re-signed Dylan Reduns, and Reduns is going to push Cesar Ruiz for the right guard spot, something like that. And yeah, in that perfect world, you're feeling a lot better about the interior. And then in that case, maybe I would be more position specific. But to me, Tiernan is rated 53rd overall on this list. I get him at 73rd. And I think he can play guard. And he's a really good tackle. So I'm happy with this pick. Love was my choice for the playmaker. I think Shuck's going to elevate the wide receivers around him. Let's give Love a running lane. Let's give him a big body on the offensive line. Let's give Shuck a big body on the offensive line. Let's run the ball. Let's protect the quarterback. And let's hope that Shuck at quarterback elevates the talent around him, as well as Jeremiah Love now having a better situation in front of him. So I really hate not trading down, but those are your top three players: Jeremiah Love, Joshua Josephs, Caleb Tiernan, and now we have to wait forever. Is it 59 picks? Almost 60 picks Most of the time, you only have to wait 32 to 40 picks before you get a draft again, a pick again. But man, we bottom of the barrel. We traded our fourth round pick for Devon Vele. And at this point, you look at this draft, that pick would be there. Pick, 108 or something like that. I don't know, something like that. Pick 108, 110, something like that. You would have that pick, and that would have been a good pick to have. I think Zachariah Branch was still there, and I'd have probably gone after him there. But instead, you got Devon Vele, and if he turns out to be a starting wide receiver and looks as good as he did at the end of the year before he got hurt, then that's a really good fourth round wide receiver. That's where you're drafting him. That's where it happens. Everybody's bummed out. We lost the pick. Well, put the pick in here and put next to it Devon Vele, big, nice wide receiver. That's going to be a nice complement to Olave. Now you got two bottom of the barrel fourth round picks. With pick 132 in the fourth round of the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select tight end Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. Eli Stowers. By the way, Tiernan is 6'7", so he'd be a really tall guard, but 325. 325 is an excellent size for a guard. And, we've got a tall quarterback, so I'm not too worried about a 6'7" guard. If he doesn't make it at guard, or if we're good with Ruiz and whoever we get in free agency, then Tiernan becomes your immediate backup tackle. And think about how many times a backup tackle had to come in this past year for the Saints with Awesome Richards and Sherman. So yeah, Tiernan's your guy now, and yeah, I hope he works at guard. Stowers is 6'4", 235 pounds. Okay, Stowers is a receiver, a big receiver. I didn't address receiver early. I want to get weapons for Tyler Shuck. Eli Stowers is a guy, and I'm happy to get him. At 235, he's a touch bigger than Jawan Johnson. So you're not asking Stowers to play inline tight end. If you are, I heard someone say you're wasting your time. You're wasting Stowers' time. That's not why you get Stowers. You get Stowers to be a receiver. But we're asking Jawan Johnson to play inline tight end all the time. And I think Eli Stowers would be a touch better at run blocking than Jawan Johnson. So I may be wasting my time. I may not have been doing this to begin with. I've been complaining we need a better run blocking tight end for years. So I'm not the one putting Jawan Johnson in line. It's the Saints doing that. And with Eli Stowers, if you're wasting your time with him doing it, you're wasting your time with Johnson doing it. But here's the hoping that Stowers develops into a better run blocker than Johnson. But as far as having another weapon for your quarterback, you got it in Stowers and a big guy. So imagine that, having Stowers and Jawan Johnson. You get up to the line, it's 3rd and 1. You put both of them in line, you run the ball, you get your first down. Then you go no huddle. The other team is in the defense for stopping a short run, and all of a sudden you're splitting Eli Stowers and Jawan Johnson out wide with your receivers. And you've run up to the line of scrimmage, they don't have a chance to substitute. Man, and they're in short yardage defense. And that's where you can really tear a team up. So I got you, Kellen Moore, Ellen Moore. I got you. I see what you're doing. That would be some great stuff right there. You could just tear them up. Now, hopefully, you get that running game going on 3rd and 1 to begin with. But yeah, that's the kind of no huddle offense, keeping their defense out there, getting them in that situation. Let their bigs come in on 3rd and 1 and then go no huddle after that. I love it. So what do we do with the second fourth round pick? With pick 136 in the fourth round of the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select the best nickelback in college football. In the draft this year, cornerback Keontae Scott out of Miami. Wow. What a stud. 6 foot, 192 pounds. Is he going to be the star? I don't know. He could definitely play it because he is the best nickel. And he's really good against the run. He's a good tackler. He plays the run so well. And, he's good in coverage. We all saw in the last playoff game of my recording here, Deontay Scott had pick six. Yeah, Scott is always been high on my boards, but high on my boards as a nickel, you know, I don't know. Nickelback in this defense is star. So, we'll see. I don't know if Scott would be a great star, but I think he'd be an upgrade. Fourth round pick, best nickel in the draft. You come in and compete with at least Ugo Amadi and Terrell Burgess for that nickel's backup nickel. And if you haven't re-signed Alante Taylor, then this pick makes a lot of sense. All right, let's go into the fifth round. Not very many picks away from the last fourth round pick we made. We're going to be choosing with pick 148 in the fifth round of the 2026 NFL Draft. The New Orleans Saints select wide receiver Dion Burks out of Oklahoma. Well, I passed on Zachariah Branch, who's 5'10", 175 pounds. I go ahead and get Dion Burks in the fifth round. So, no, I didn't spend a third round pick on a 5'10", 175 guy. I spent a fifth round pick on a 5'9" guy. But he ain't 175. Dion Burks is 188. So 5'9", 188. When you watch Dion Burks play, he plays a lot bigger than that 5'9" height. And he's got some thickness to him, He's got 12, 13 pounds on Branch, even though he's an inch shorter. Burks is explosive and a great playmaker, but the same as Branch, so small that you're not sure how they hold up as a down in, down out wide receiver. I don't want to draft a guy in the third round who, has exceptional ability and something this team doesn't currently have, but, might not be able to hold up. If I take a chance on that, I feel much better in the fifth round. Dion Burks is a good pick for me. I've gotten a big receiver in Eli Stowers, and yeah, and now I've gotten the element we don't have, a returner and a speed guy with the ball in his hands, a good playmaker. And we'll see if Burks can crack into this lineup. Is Trey Palmer going to be too much to handle for Burks to compete with? We'll see. And with the second, fifth round pick, this isn't a position I wanted to address, but the value was there. So I went ahead and did it. This player was by far the highest rated player left on the board. I mean, by 40 picks. He was 135 overall, and I get him with pick 170 in the fifth round of the 2026 NFL Draft. The New Orleans Saints select Malachi Lawrence, edge rusher out of Central Florida. Malachi Lawrence is 6'4", 250 pounds. It's really good against the run. And at 250 pounds, he fits this defense. And of course, he's an edge rusher and he can get after the passer. I passed on Lawrence with the first pick in the fifth round, even though I saw the value because we already addressed edge rusher. But I got down to pick 170 and he's just too good to pass up. I mean, I could have gone with a lesser interior lineman on the offense or the defense. I could have gone that route. I was debating on getting Xavier Harris out of Ole Miss at that point because I wanted to address the defensive line so badly. But Lawrence is too much of a talent to pass up here. So the value's there for me. It wasn't anything I was planning on doing, but now you've got two edge rushers on your team in Josephs and Lawrence. So, let's. You didn't get Arvell Reese, but you've got a couple of guys now that can rotate in with the guys we've already got. So, and with the last pick in this draft, pick 190 in the sixth round of the 2026 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Xavier Harris, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, who I debated on getting with pick 170, and he was still there with pick 190. I go ahead and grab him. Harris is 6'7", 320 pounds, so he's going to be a tall, big dude in the middle of the defensive line. I don't think Harris is particularly great against the run or rushing the passer, but he is a talent that we need some talent on this defensive line. So you only get 8 picks. You can't address everything. You don't get a big receiver early. You don't get a complete tight end. You don't get a defensive lineman early. And when you look at it that way, this draft could be considered a fail. But if you would have traded down in the first round and traded down in the second round, you would have ended up with like 3 more third round picks, a couple of more fourth round picks. You would have had a fifth round pick in there too, an extra fifth. So you would have had yourself about 5 extra bodies to choose from. And yeah, you can address a lot more positions when you have extra picks. But this is the big board, and this is how this draft ended up. There you go, the Saints draft class for 2026. Mostly focusing on the offense. We got us a running back, an offensive lineman, a tight end, a wide receiver. And then we managed to grab 4 defensive players, 2 edge rushers, a defensive lineman, and a cornerback, an excellent nickel. So that is how the draft ended up. And I'm glad I was able to break down the first and second rounds. I want you guys to experience it the way I did. And let me know in the comments what you would have done different in hindsight. You would have been sprinting to the podium with your card for Arvell Reese. Great. So who would you have gotten in the second round? Maybe Elijah Surratt at wide receiver. Arvell Reese in the first round, Elijah Surratt in the second round. That'd have been pretty tight. Then in the third round, instead of getting that offensive lineman, I could have gone defensive line. I could have gotten Darrell Jackson Jr. out of Florida State. Big Citrus was still there, the orange. So that's another big guy. Of course, Dante Corleone was still there in the third round. So I could have addressed interior defensive line in the third round instead of going with an offensive lineman. But like I said, we don't have a guard with pen to paper right now. And until we do, that's the number one need for this team, in my opinion. We have to upgrade that offensive line in the middle, or you're never going to give Shuck exactly what he needs. What he needs is time to throw the ball, and he can make players out of, you know, Vele and Pope, and in this draft, Stowers and Burks. He can make those guys players. Just give him time and give him a running back, an option besides him for them to worry about. I like it. This was a good draft. It wasn't great. That's why I wanted to break it all down the way I did because I wanted you guys to experience it and let me know in the comments what you think. This is how it turned out. Later on this week or next week, I'm going to give us another mock draft, and this time we're going to do trades. And when that one's said and done, we're going to compare that one to this one, and we'll have us a nice little discussion about whether trading down's a good idea or not. I mean, if you think the best player on the board was Arvell Reese and you want to get best player available, then this draft is a fail for you already. But I do have a video that I did last week talking about my top 10 prospects in the first round for the Saints. And yeah, I got Jeremiah Love #1 on that list. I've actually got 3 offensive players on the top of that list before I ever consider Reese. I just think offense needs to be fixed. Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon, and Jeremiah Love would be some fixes on the offense. And then, yeah, yeah, I don't know what to say. We were in the top 10 in sacks. So, yeah, I would love Arvell Reese to be the a replacement for Cam Jordan and Demario Davis, right? Because Arvell Reese would play linebacker and then on third down would rush the passer. So you could you could replace 2 aging players on our team with one guy. I hear it. I hear you. And Reese, I would not be disappointed if Reese was the pick. But let me know in the comments and let's have a discussion about it. And subscribe to my channel so we can continue to talk about it. You guys can convince me with some valid arguments. And yeah, let's call it discussions because I don't argue. My heart's not in this. I'm not in love with any of these players. I'm a trade down king. I would have traded down in the first round to pick 11, and I would have still got Love. That's what I would have done. That would have been great. Let me know what you guys want to do. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?